Happy Sunday, everybody. It is 8:30 Eastern Time, and we are sitting in Angel's Citadel's Lounge. The fire's on, the chairs are comfy, we've got drinks, we got a few snacks maybe, and we've got a friend. For those of you that don't know, the name Ganza Gaming is the brainchild of Christopher Negelein. He is uh, a publisher of role-playing game supplements, fiction, and other sundry items. And we're glad to have him with us in the lounge tonight. How you doing today, Chris?
Thank you for being so gracious as I just, snuck in here and just sat in the chair.
It doesn't happen as often as you think, you know?
No, true. So how are you guys tonight?
We're doing pretty well. It's been kind of a relaxing couple of days, and I'm still looking for a job. So last week has been a bunch of interviews, and I've already got a whole bunch for this next coming week. We'll see what happens, but the weekend's always kind of a nice thing. I get to sit back and every other week, we've got our Invisible Sun stream, and I get to chat TTRPGs with my wife every Sunday night, and it's just it's kind of a fun thing to do. So
I'm wishing you the best of luck, man.
I appreciate that.
I hope you become part of the great upgrade, as they're calling it now. They went from great resignation to great upgrade because they're figuring out the missing people are there. They just don't have better jobs now. That's why they're not in the job market. They're just not in the job market of the old jobs they had.
I hope so. I hope to be joining that group soon. So for those of you that haven't participated in our lounge, welcome. We have a chat window. Feel free to drop questions in the chat. We'll answer them live. And we're talking today. We've got kind of a theme topic, but don't let that stop you from asking any of your questions. We want to make sure that we cover, if you have things that you want to know about your game or advice you want to look for from us, questions you want to ask, recommendations you're looking for, drop those in chat. We'll be happy to get to them, even though it's not necessarily on the topic that we had planned. This is sort of a rambling discussion, and amongst old friends. We've known Chris for a while now, and unfortunately for him, he's known us. And so, today we're going to talk a little bit about types of role-playing games. And what I wanted to know, or at least start discussing, was the idea of, both Joanne and I, and Chris too, for the most part, come from backgrounds of very structured type games like Dungeons and Dragons and Shadowrun, where they're rules heavy, and you want to do something, and there's text that says this is how you do it, and then you want to do the next thing, and there's text that says this is how you do this, and it may or may not be different from the last thing. And so that can sometimes drag games out if you don't know them, or if your players don't know them. And along the way, somewhere, we sort of shifted to what are more often now called narrative type games. Things like the Cipher system, things like Fate, things like Iron Sworn, or I don't know, some other ones. Any other ones help? Those types of games where it's maybe a little more free flow on the rules. There's a lot more emphasis on GM, what you call GM fiat, The idea that the GM can make the call based on the narrative, based on the situation, and it's not supposed to be GM versus players. So in theory, that becomes a possible way to do that kind of storytelling. And what caused that shift, and how is that different? How does that make the gaming experience different for us? So, Chris, tell us a little bit about where you started, where you came from, and what you think.
Well, my story for getting into role playing, uh, jumping a little earlier, I probably a year or two earlier, I had read Lord of the Rings. It was a kind of a, my grandparents had a junk room that was also kind of a library, and someone in college had gotten that rule set. See how that the whole paradigm kind of locks in sometimes. Um, and then I heard in Boy Scout camp some people talking about flaming swords, and I was like, "What?" And I mean, and even then, I mean, we didn't have anything. So while I went to rules a little later, those first days didn't really have that many rules. It was like, yeah, I kind of remember them. I don't have them on me. And the guy drew a map, and we didn't even have dice. They took pieces of paper, put numbers on them, and put them in envelopes. Chits is what we called them then. And you'd pull it out for your dice roll. And like the next day, I was like, "See, look, I made a map too." And I made look I thought would be like a natural cavern system. And he's like, "That's not how a dungeon goes." Which later we figured out, no, that's not right. Chris, the neophyte Chris was not wrong. Like a lot of young game masters, people try to tell them what they're doing is wrong, and that's not exactly right. And then if this will truly date it, I got the second red box with the Larry Elmore cover from the Sears and Roebuck mail order catalog.
Heck yeah, man!
So, and then I got the blue box. So I was always never went into like the expanded stuff. Because then I went to Gamma World, and then I went to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is a Palladium system. You want to talk about complicated, right? Um, I was a big Car Wars fan. For those who don't know what Car Wars was, it was a tiny little box of a game. Now, if I pulled that out of the closet, the game is this big, but it's about an alternate reality where back then it wasn't the alternate reality; it was the future of cars being, you slapping on some machine guns and making a demolition derby out of it. Very Death Race 2000, uh,
Mad Max.
Mad Max, with a little more civilization to it. All with electric cars, by the way. So even then, Steve Jackson Games was ahead of the curve. Um, but then I heard there was this game called GURPS, and you could play Car Wars role playing with it, Auto Duel. So I learned GURPS. But to be really honest, except for like how to do, some of the combat with the cars, I just used the first 4 pages of GURPS. That served my needs quite a bit. And then after that, I went into Storyteller, where you want to learn about rules that don't make sense because they weren't even designed. We found out later. But, and did you guys hear about that, right? That they've confessed that most of the rules they just kind of pulled out of that dark place. And I don't mean dark metaphorically, more literally.
No.
And then like the very first edition doesn't work. Not even edition one, like edition 0 of Vampire doesn't work because you rolled 10s. You had successes and you had ones that were negatives, and they cancel each other out, which means that a person with a big pool of dice has a difficulty 10. They have almost as much a chance of drastically failing as they do succeeding, which makes no sense. If you're supposed to be super skilled in something, you should be the person who makes above the bar, right? And then
Yep.
for a lot of times I kind of avoided D&D because I felt like it was just way too restrictive and weird. Like humans are adaptable, but they don't multi-class, they dual class, which sounds more like you super specialize and then you super specialize again. I was like, demi-humans should be the ones that are dual classes because they live forever, so they have time to get perfect in one thing. And humans should multi-class because they're good at everything, that sort of stuff. And then, storyteller for a very long time. And then I think Oh, and then I was in a metaphorically dark place. I was in the middle of nowhere with a big trunk of college games and like 6 redneck kids out in the middle of nowhere who, I mean, I lost them all to Diablo. Let's put it that way. Once Diablo came out, they didn't want to play my role-playing games anymore. It was bad. I almost quit gaming because of those yahoos. Because the internet wasn't up and around yet to support, stream gaming and stuff like that. And then came to South Florida where we had 3.5 hit the scene. I'm sorry, 3E. I'm sorry. It wasn't 3.5 yet. And for me, when it came to rules, I have not been a fan as a player of Vancian Magic, which really isn't Vancian Magic in the first place if you actually read the Dying Earth series, and bought every D20 book that promised me to do something different with spellcasting that wasn't spell slots. So that kind of takes me up through all of my heavy geared gaming days, so to speak. And then I think what else? And then basically what it boiled down to is after a while, I just didn't have as much time. I didn't have enough energy and as much energy. And I didn't want to look up every rule for everything. So I kind of started leaning more and more light. And being, when you've been game mastering for a while, you're a lot more comfortable with your decisions on the fly than you might be when you're kind of new to the system. That's just my 2 cents. What about you guys?
Well, see, you gave this long spiel about all the stuff that you've done, and I've done bupkis. The first system I learned was GURPS, but the GM that I had at the time was an a-hole and expected me to read the entire GURPS book before we would play. Yes.
This is why I never did Battletech. Same identical reason.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. We've recently got into starting playing Battletech because Josh bought me the beginner box. And so I've been slowly getting into it inch by inch. I will state that as complicated as GURPS is and as complicated as Shadowrun can be and as complicated as, all these, none of them are like ASL. That's a horrible game. It's Advanced Squad Leader, which is basically these guys got together and built this system that represents World War II and the military actions. Basically, it's like a word game, but it's played with these little bitty, itty bitty. You keep nodding. You know what I'm talking about. And he handed me the book, and it's like, yeah, no, we're not. Nope.
Does the name Yaquinto ring a bell with you guys?
Yaquinto, no, it doesn't.
They only lasted for 5 years, but their shtick is they would sell you something like Advanced Squad Leader, tiny little hexes and rules on how to ignore which hexes with which colors to do different wargaming scenarios, and tiny little chits. And their shtick was they could get those double jacketed album covers for vinyl with the sleeves pretty cheap. So then they would sell it in that format. That here's your game, here's your map on the inside of the jacket for the vinyl, and then your chits are in a Ziploc bag inside where the record would be. Not making this up.
That's a little disturbing.
That's not the worst organization scheme I've ever heard of. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, so I met Josh playing Shadowrun, and I played D&D and 3.5, and then I started playing Pathfinder, and I discovered I kind of like Pathfinder a little bit better than D&D. The rule set, not necessarily the setting, but the rule set. I like the way Pathfinder 1A combined a lot of the skills that were separated in 3.5. And then somebody discovered Numenera, and then we took a flying leap into the depth of the cyber system, and that's where we've been pretty much hanging out a lot. We've expanded since then with opening up Angel Citadel and doing all the book reviews, but yeah, somebody's still very attached to his Numenera and Invisible Sun.
What can I say? So yeah, I played about 30 years of D&D. I started with the red box as well, and I actually never ended up getting the blue box, the expanded rule, or the second one. Expert rules. That's right. I had friends that had it, and we played it, but I never got the box. And so my next was AD&D second edition. I had friends that had first edition, but I bought in again at second edition, and then third, and then 3.5, and I skipped fourth and went to fifth, primarily because of the whole MMO type feel that fourth was. It was very much a tactical game, and I didn't want to play that. I had better games, like ASL. Along the way, I picked up things like BattleTech and first edition MechWarrior. I picked up things like Conspiracy X. I picked up things like the original Eon Trinity. Like, I still have the limited edition Spiral Bound Eon Trinity that didn't get the sticker when MTV sued them. So that was fun. And I found out
the first sci-fi games I had that felt like actual science fiction when I ran it. It felt like a science fiction movie.
The goofy thing was, I still have never played it, and I really, really want to. So I've gotten those, and then I got back into D&D because that's all I could get my wife at the time to play. And it was what I was familiar running. And then, in that space, I picked up Shadowrun. I started, actually, my first experience with that was at a convention. And so I sat down at this convention table in Omaha, Nebraska, to play a one-shot. And, it was a blast. It was so fun. And at the end of the 4-hour session, everybody goes up to the game master and gives him their Shadowrun books to get him to sign it. And I'm like, what the heck? And so I pulled one of them aside and I said, what's going on? It's like, dude, that's Tom Dowd. I'm like, who's Tom Dowd? So they open their second edition book and point at Magic section, written by Tom Dowd. So I promptly went and I bought myself a second edition Shadowrun core rulebook and got him to sign it. And I still have that one too. But I've been friends with him, on the internet for years and years now. So
I'm going to do a slight digression here. Swear, I mean, sadly, it's just as bad in like traditional fiction publishing, but literally, writers' names are invisible. Just invisible. Nobody knows who they are. Nobody really cares as long as they're getting their gaming goodness. It's heartbreaking sometimes. I know a guy. I talked to one guy. He was like reading all the Iron Kingdom's fiction, right? And I'm like, you like that fiction, right? Yeah. Well, do you see what other stuff those authors have written? No, I can't even remember their names off the top of my head. Why would I care? Because the others, if you liked what they wrote for Iron Kingdoms, the other stuff might push your buttons too. Blah, blah, blah,
blah. I'm the same way. When I was a kid, I was like that. I've gotten better since I've been an adult, and I've gotten a lot better since we started Angel Citadel.
It matters suddenly when you're actually doing the writing, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, when we go through and we review all these things, and I look and I start making connections, and people say, this person's an influence on me, and this person's an influence on me. Okay, I really like this game. Maybe I should go check these other ones out. And I do, and amazingly enough, holy cow, they're awesome games. So all these new names, right? That I never known before. When they come out with something new and they announce, a Kickstarter or they're releasing something on itch or whatever, heck yeah, man, I'm all over that stuff. So, and that was realistically, that's actually what got me to take a look at Numenera the first time, was Monty Cook's name. Because I knew who Monty Cook was from running 3.0 forever. And owning the DMG. So I picked that up, and it was so radically different from anything that I'd ever read as far as a role-playing game at the time that I didn't get it. I didn't understand Numenera. I tried running it once, and it was like, this isn't very fun. I don't understand this game. And we put it down. And I picked it up again probably 10 months later and actually read the GM section. And I'll tell you right now, if I've said it before and I'll say it again, that probably 30 pages is among the best role-playing text I have ever read. I use that section, that advice everywhere now. And that's really what started my journey into narrative gaming. So from there to Cypher, and then we started Angel's Citadel on Adair. We've shared that story before. And as we've picked these games up, so it's okay, what's Fate? So we took Fate. We had a friend, Sean Drake of Drake and Dice Publishing, or a couple of Drakes, I should say. And they're like, oh, you like stuff like Cypher, you like stuff like Fate, you ought to try this Blades in the Dark. What the heck is Blades in the Dark? And now all of a sudden, anytime John Harper comes out with anything, or Sean Nittner, I'm like, holy cow, But it's that same thing, right? It's almost like a rabbit hole now. You just keep finding new cool stuff.
I mean, for me, that mindset kind of started because I enjoy movies, and I started paying attention to certain actors and certain directors. Because then I know if this person or that person is attached to the project, I'm like, oh, I'm going to check this out. But I mean, you mentioned in Fate, but I want to throw it back a little bit. No disrespect to all the people that are inventing and doing cool things now, but the indie scene, there was an indie scene before the indie scene, as they call it now, with Michael Pondsmith, who is a POC designer that's been in the Hall of Fame for 20 years now, practically.
Cyberpunk 2020.
2020, indeed. But also Castle Falkenstein, which uses playing cards. Because you are, ladies and gentlemen, who are in an alternate reality, role-playing an adventure out, and since you're of class, you don't use dice. Only the commoners use dice.
That's right.
And
hey, Kelton, good to see you. Thanks for coming by.
And then there's also Dream Park, which, before Gumshoe and before a lot of indie games, 1d6. And it was a game about players being in a huge LARP simulation camp, Disney park sort of thing. So meta upon meta, 1d6. This was also another Altusorian product, and it was based off a novel that if you read it now, you'll see how prescient it was, which was also called Dream Park, by Larry Niven, who invented the sci-fi cat people everybody loved before Klingons came around. The kids.
Mm-hmm. Ow.
Yep.
And also a POC writer, Stephen Barnes, who's like one of my heroes. Also, Mr. Peel's, one of Mr. Peel's heroes as well. It's probably, he came out today with his new movie, or the trailer for his new movie Nope. But yeah, so yeah, just lots of stuff. If you look back, you can see that there's been people trying to get around to doing the narrative, before we had this whole new crop of great games like Fate and Powered by the Apocalypse. And I'm sure I'm missing one somewhere, Mothership.
Oh, Mothership is
And
interesting.
Morkborg.
Morkborg too, yeah. We actually, so we backed the box set of Mothership. I'm looking forward to seeing that. And we played our first game of Morkborg, not the actual Morkborg, but Vast Grim is what it's called.
Oh, yeah.
That was an interesting experience too. I could totally get behind that system as a one-shot con system because it's amazingly quick to prep stuff.
Your players don't last that long. Oh, their characters don't.
Well, but if you're in a 4-hour con slot, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. I also, for Morkborg, I like their OGL is like 2 paragraphs. And
use it.
Here's a logo to use, and that's it.
Use it and say you got it from us.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's
heavy metal enough to do what you, at the end of your campaign to do the thing.
I'm sorry.
Have you been heavy metal enough to actually do what they say you should do when you wrap up your Morkborg campaign?
No, it was just one episode.
Read it. It says when you're done using the campaign, you're supposed to take the book, burn it, and then send them a picture of you burning the book.
Oh, jeez.
How about no?
Yeah, no, I don't burn my books, thanks.
And they also have some glow-in-the-dark ink in there somewhere, if you haven't noticed already.
I'm a bit possessive of my books. We're not burning them.
So the thing about the thing about that though, what is it they called it? Art punk or something?
Yeah, that seems to be the new name for that, and that seems to be used a little divisively when they say that.
Well, when I say that, I don't necessarily mean it derisively, but it becomes so as you get older, and I say that as one that's in a group now of 3 people on this stream that are older. Stuff like that can get hard in the eyes if you're trying to read it for extended periods of time. It's not like it's bad. It's just maybe maybe not formatted well for all reading types, I guess.
And as a writer, I'm like, how much actual text is in this book?
Not much. Not much. I mean, you could shrink down like the tables, the random tables and stuff like that to look like the old D&D formatted. And I bet that book would be, and you typeset it the regular way, and I bet that book wouldn't be more than about 25 pages. If that.
And I'll tell you, art is important. One of the first reviews I got for one of my first Cypher community content projects, the person was like, it seems really small. There doesn't seem to be much in here. It's only a few pages. And didn't have any art because I was still trying to kind of get my gears going on learning, how to use InDesign. And I updated it, put the same thing out with about as much art as you expect. And people reviewed it. Nobody ever complained it was too short again.
Interesting. It's amazing how differently stuff like that gets received.
Oh, you can have a great presentation with a mediocre system, and you'll have better luck with that than a really perfect game design and crappy presentation. Really, if you have a great design and you give yourself crappy presentation, you don't understand how much you shot yourself in the foot.
And that
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That makes me really, really grateful for my vice president of creative design and stuff like that, because she does an amazing job with that. Well, you saw You saw Hope's Horizon.
Mhm.
So
I'm expecting even better things soon.
we are, and so we've talked a little bit about stuff that's coming up on this stream before. I'll say it again. We've got a new setting that we're working on in pairing with an actual system, a game system called Cipher System. No, just kidding. Called the Citadel System. And the setting is going to be a post-apocalyptic cyberpunk type setting called the Therian Vector. But once
Don't forget, we also changed a bunch of the history too.
we did, it's an alternate reality post-apocalyptic cyberpunk setting. But once we're done with that system, we're actually going to take Hope's Horizon and finish statting out all the tiers for the Cipher System for the community creator. But then we're going to turn around and re-release it with this new system, and the system itself will be CCBY as well.
I am looking forward to it.
That's kind of the plan. It's going to be fun. So we've talked a little bit about our history. When you made that switch from games with bigger mechanics, whether you use them or not, to more rules light systems, what was it that you found, that you personally found better, or maybe not, maybe better is the wrong word, more comfortable with those kinds of systems that made you stay?
I like to think that maybe it's self-delusional. I like to think that my improv game is pretty strong. So I like the lighter systems because then the rules don't contradict me. And I think part of my draw to that was, I'm a game master, so I enjoy game mastering. In fact, I'm starting to lean less away from the label of narrative and leaning more into experience, because sometimes narrative has a lot of literal baggage to it, or literature baggage to it. You got to tell a story, so therefore stories have to have arcs. Therefore, your game has to have arcs, and there's things that people expect that they should do as a character, because it's a character, not a avatar or whatever you want to call it. And I'm like, you can't play Wolverine the way you want to as you read it in the comic book, because you have to read him more like he is in X-Men, when he's always with everybody, not when he's off alone, even in an X-Men comic. Like when I say X-Men, I don't mean the whole catalog. I mean the literal team, book that they have. And I also think it was being impatient. I just want to go. Okay, how long are we going to sit here and make characters? Yes, no, yes, no. It's one of the reasons why when I do play D&D, I want you all to do the build system and bring your characters to me. I don't want to sit here and verify every roll you did to make sure you didn't cheat.
Oh my goodness.
Just impatience. I want to get to running a game, guys.
Look, if I got to worry about you cheating or something like that, or if I care enough that a dice roll matters to my game, then I'm playing the wrong game. I mean, come on.
I think a lot of people who like narrative, their dream game is they can just, and I think Cypher was a step in that direction. Here's all this stuff to keep you entertained and to pull levers and to show that you have a cool ability for each cool aspect of your character. And I'm over here and I don't even have to pay attention to that. I can just throw you guys into the situation and we can rock and roll from there. And I don't have to look at my book to see what you do and how it interacts with my thing. Or if you say, wait a minute, I got a thing, I'm like, well, great. That thing actually even makes this situation even nicer and juicier and more fun versus, oh, wait, I got to look up the book to see how this interacts with my, steampunk necromancer.
I've noticed that a lot of those kinds of games, they will either have very laissez-faire mechanic, or everything is exactly the same mechanic. Take for instance, Blades of the Dark, right? Every kind of roll that you've got in Blades of the Dark is a D6 roll, where a 5 or 6 is a success, one's a failure, and then like a 3 and a 4 is success with consequence, right? So you can add some dice to that with some changes, but it's really all right. We're going to figure out what you're doing. We're going to figure out what it's based on. And that's going to be a conversation, and then you're going to throw a dice roll, and then we're going to go on, and we're going to talk some more, and then we're going to talk some more, and then we're going to talk some more, and then you're going to say I want to do something. We're going to talk a little bit how you're going to do it, and then you're going to throw a dice roll. And it's very much, you don't have to remember anything. You don't have to remember, okay, is this the one where I use the D10 or is that the D4 roll, or do I have to add a D6 here, or is it, am I adding to the dice, or am I adding to the dice roll, or you don't have to worry about any of that crap. It's all the same thing, and everything's based on the same mechanic. And yeah, you can say that that's kind of boring, but at the same time, from my perspective as a GM, it makes it real easy to keep my players focused at the table, because I can pound story and I can pound what your characters are doing, rather than, okay, hang on just a second, I'm going to go look this up in the rules because I can't remember which dice roll this is, or what all the modifiers for this thing are,
100%. But I think that also takes also a level of trust with you and your players. Going right back to, like, you're like, oh, Chris, if I have to watch somebody roll their dice for their attributes, we're already having issues.
I agree with you.
And I think that's why probably narrative games are best with a crew you've already got established, versus trying to do a narrative game with a bunch of strangers, unless they're at a convention and have specifically signed up for a narrative game. Like if you're trying to do one of those, hey, I want to support my game store, so I'm just going to all come in and drop out however you want. I'm just running this game and showing people how to play the game. Or, somebody who's experienced wants to come in and just do something random. In those situations, probably while a stronger rule set is kind of a pain to get everybody up and going, it might be better because in the long run, you can say, no, it's right here. Of course, a lot of the better rule sets that are like that have rule 0 in there, right? The game master, whatever the game master decides at the end, no matter how many rules we use or don't use, still the game master.
One of the things that I've noticed, though, for stuff like that anyway, where the game systems seem to be better, think like Free RPG Day, where they've got a 10-page thing or whatever of, here's this, like DCC, right? That book is freaking 800,000 pages long. It's huge. Okay.
No, it's not.
But they've boiled it down into the basics, maybe 5, maybe 10 pages, and they give that out for free with a quick one-shot adventure for Free RPG Day. Companies that can do that can get away with the mechanic more heavy.
Well, the secret to that, and for people who aren't familiar with Dungeon Crawl Classics, is a big chunk of that page count is you roll dice for your spells, and there is a individual chart for spell backfire for each spell. And the book will tell you there's over 200 spells. So basically a spell has a whole page to itself because of that chart.
Yeah, I remember going through that and looking at that the first time. I'm like, holy crap!
But just a second, let me double confirm this real quick because I thought I had it here. No, there is an app that now lets you do all of that without having to look in the book. And I thought I had it on here. I did not. It's Purple Sorcerer or something like that. But if you're doing Dungeon Crawl Classics, that is an awesome resource to be using.
Yeah, that's one I didn't know. I'll have to check that out because that's news to me.
Lets you add all your, if you want to, do spell burn or you have luck, it adds all that stuff in, and then you just click on the spell that you're using, and it coughs up the result.
Interesting.
The Crawler's Companion. That is the name for it. From Purple Sorcerer Games. That's where I got the purple part from. In Purple Sorcerer, they also have their own. They have some of their own little DCC adventures and things you can do. Yeah, they have like. They have like 15 of their own adventures. So it's not just an app you can get. You can get more Dungeon Crawl Classic goodness. I have a little story to tell about Dungeon Crawl Classics, actually.
Go for it.
Okay, so for just backing up for those who aren't familiar, one of the ways Dungeon Crawl Classics separates itself from the crowd is they have this thing called the funnel. And what it is you take a 0-level character. Actually, I take that back. You have like 4 0-level characters that you take into a dungeon. And usually the setup is, it was a horrible drought. It was a horrible winter. You're all starving. You're starting to look at each other for cannibalism. And yet the dungeon that you heard of that appears only once in 100 years has appeared on the hill. And you are all so desperate. The entire village is going down to the dungeon to see what kind of treasures and shelter they can find to be able to like buy things and live. And then, like I said, 4 random 0-level. Like literally, you can roll up a pig farmer with a pitchfork and a chicken or a cow. And then the trick is you take your characters, and they're only like on an index card, right? Okay. And you line them up in front of you in a row. And the one that's first is the one that's actually engaging in the adventure, and the others are kind of in the back. So if you look them over and go, yeah, I like this guy. He looks I want him. You put him in the back. So hopefully, because what happens is they die like flies. I ran one with 9 people. At that point, I did like 2 characters apiece versus 4. And I was like, yes, so it appears on the hill. The door has a face with 2 gems in the eyes. What do you guys do? I'd pull out a dagger and I'm going to pry out those eyes. Oh, okay. So 1d6 electric damage for the magic booby trap. You have 1d4 hit points at dead. Even the first 5 minutes, we had carnage. And whoever survives is the pot of PCs you pick to become your first level characters in the actual game. This concept is fun enough that at a geek's bachelor party, I was the entertainment by running a Dungeon Crawl Classic funnel game there. And even the guys who never role played before, like I didn't, turn them on to role playing, but they're like, that was different, but that was fucking fun. Language.
That's don't worry about it. This is an adult stream.
And so it's a fun little, game in its own right. And they like everyone else, even though they have all these charts to play for the different spells, they really try to push that rules are there to guide the fun, not be the fun. And
that's a good thing.
Exactly. And their style of adventures are very like Gonzo. It's like literally you are adventuring inside spray paint van art. The art you see spray painted on the side of a van with the unicorn and the barbarian and the wizard who's obviously smoking something that would have been illegal 5 years ago. That's their vibe.
Well,
They want you to feel like you're in that.
and you mentioned Goodman Games. Um, while I've not played Dungeon Crawl Classics, I have the book, and I've got I've got some adventures for it. Heck, I backed the whole the Kickstarter they just had with Jack Vance's stuff.
The Dying Earth stuff.
Yeah, the Dying Earth stuff. We backed that for world building purposes. I mean, just they do some really quality stuff, but all of their third edition um, games that they've done, like the original adventures, are fantastic. They're all
Third
quality product.
5e? Or you're talking about 5e or 3?
Or no, the original 3E ones that they used to do.
Oh, yep.
I've got like 15 of those things, man. They're awesome. And their team is just quality product. So yeah, I can totally get behind recommending people check them out.
And more props to them. They heavily support their third-party publishers. They will, unlike most of the, I can't even speak today. Unlike most of the publishers that do their own stuff, they'll be happy to like put a feature on, this is the third-party publisher we would like you to know today. Or if there's Kickstarters they're aware of, they'll crow to the heavens about it. And they'll sell your stuff on their website. Not community content like other companies. Like literally, you did your own Kickstarter, you published it, and they're like, bring it on in. We'll sell it for you.
I'm trying to think. There does crud free world publishing or the ones that just did Dune. They is it no Modifius?
Well, I confuse Modifius with Free League all the time, and that's because I think Modifius was Free League's distributor until they broke separately.
Yeah, one of them's just a distributor, and the other one is
Modifius,
a content creator.
Yeah, Modifius. I think. Yep, they're the ones that did it. So it's probably 2D20 system then.
But they do that too. They'll bring in your content on their website and they'll sell it. Companies that do that is awesome,
right? For a while, the Morkboard guys were doing the same thing. They'd be like, "You submit to us, and we'll sell it for you. We'll even clean it up and put it in layout and design for you." That stopped.
Evil Hat does that with the space one. Crud. Scum and Villainy is not a. I mean, it's published by Evil Hat, but it's not an Evil Hat game. It's an independent one. Same with Blades in the Dark. That's one. It's like 111 Publishing or something like that. So yeah, I mean, there are companies out there that do that, and when they support the gamers, when they support the authors, it warms your heart,
Definitely. Though, I can't complain about community content because I mean that is something that's still great.
Very much so.
I mean, a perfect example is I've heard people complain, I only get 50%. I'm like, did you ever write a fiction novel and even get it to the point of getting published? Because here's news for you. You'll be getting 15%. And part of that is your agent's cut. To have somebody say, I'll put this on a website and, it's out there for people to find and it's officially product, and you get a 50% cut. I mean, most times when you're a full RPG professional, which a lot of these people who want to try to do community content are, you're work for hire. You get a flat rate and that's it. So to get a royalty, is a percentage? It's great. Because really 50% is no longer royalties. That's pretty much points.
Yeah. And it's been good to us too. Even just the one thing that we've got out there right now.
So for me with Cypher, because that's part of getting into that narrative thing, what happened was I was doing a lifestyle geek podcast, at the time, and we interviewed Shauna. I think she was pushing Thanks, the Kickstarter for No Thank You Evil. And then I tried my hand about 6 years ago to do my own streaming stuff. And I used Cypher to do it because it was a connection we had. And I thought that was a good fit. And that pretty much got me hooked. And then once they went to community content, I felt comfortable enough with Cypher. That's why I started writing. In fact, I did that before I did 5e. I felt more comfortable with Cypher long before I felt comfortable enough to do game design for 5e.
So, and very much those of you that don't know, Chris has probably the most popular downloaded community content for the Cypher system. It was a fantasy adaptation before Godforsaken came out, called Mortal Fantasy, and it was originally both a generic fantasy supplement and a supplement for Gods of the Fall that allowed you to play mortals rather than godlike characters like the setting calls for. But it's fantastic. It's one we've reviewed. You can go to our website and look up Mortal Fantasy, and you can see what we said about it. But it's by far the most popular, the most downloaded Cypher supplement out there right now. So
thank you. That was bottle and a lightning for me, pretty much.
Right time, right product. I mean, that was there for what, 2 years before Monty came out with Godforsaken?
I do believe so. And it's still pretty strong because people consider it, the Monty Cook games, they have a way of explaining things and doing things. And I had a different way. So for some people, it clicks more the way I presented. For others, it clicks more the other way. I mean, they were kind of like, you can make a ranger by combining an explorer with like this or that. And on top of that, I feel like it's an unsung part of Cypher that you can custom make a type. But people seem a little shy about doing that. And I don't blame them. Like I said, it takes a while to feel comfortable with the system. So I provided those types. So if you wanted to do Paladin, or you wanted to do a Ranger, or a Rogue, or a Wizard Fighter multi-class, I gave you options to do that.
You bet. And Kelton, you're absolutely correct. The whole writing fiction thing being a mess. You and Chris ought to commiserate on the server. We don't have very many authors, but you two are definitely among them. So yeah, that's a whole other market that I've never tapped and don't know much about. I actually have a publicist friend that has shared what little I know about that industry. And both Joanne and I, we write things. We've actually published some of it on our website, but if you want to look up, there's a section at the top of angelcitadel.com that's original fiction, and we've got a couple of short stories up there. So, but it's not published. It's not like money producing or anything like that. When you get into the business side of that, I don't know anything about it.
Share with you. I spent 10 years in a workshop with a really great mentor, Adam Troy Castro. And he told me that what he saw, I was pretty much ready for not the big time, but just to be, a good mid-lister, which is not an insult. To say that you can be a dependable writer that can make a thing about it. He goes, now you just need luck. And I'm like, no, now I'm screwed. And I have some stuff that's on Amazon. And at the time, the algorithms for Kindle was, if it was short and people read it all the way through, you'd get money. And then I did 8 short stories or novellas, and then they changed their algorithm to now it has to be a big thing, and people have to read a lot more of it for you to get anything. So I have vastly made much more money from my gaming material than I ever did from my fiction stuff. In fact, right now they're still investigating. The big thing with Kindle is a lot of con men are making tons of money off of it, because what they do is they hire people to like read it just enough that it trips the censors to send money to the con man, and then after 2 weeks he takes the book down, and this recycles another new book. And the book he recycles, it has enough gibberish in it that the AI or logarithms for Amazon don't detect that it's plagiarized, and don't detect that, it fools it into thinking it's an original thing when it's something that's very low effort to put out.
Wow.
I think many of them make six figures just hiring people to read their stuff and make a good rating, and then put in another piece of like random garbage stuff.
Holy cow. Seriously?
Seriously.
Dang.
Traditional publishing, I'm not saying, it's all everybody, but it doesn't hurt. It greatly helps, but it's not always, you still have the outliers of people that are just getting into it and stuff like that. And even then, there's a lot of very talented people that rarely get published because they just can't play the game. And then there's people that like, why they play the game, and then they know the people, and you're like 50 Shades of Grey. Like I've had lots of people read my stuff and go, why is 50 Shades Grey making money when I read what you have? Why are you not even published?
You write what people want to read. And
that's part of my problem is I didn't do that. I wrote Frankenstein in the Old West, or Frankenstein's monster in the Weird West. Nobody wants to read that.
But I know a guy that would probably make a graphic novel of it. James Arcolone.
Maybe I should talk to him.
What is it? The Dead Jack or whatever it is. The guy that was doing that Kickstarter with with Cypher, you remember?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he'd get a kick out of something like that, I bet. But so we've talked a little bit about publishing, and I know you've done Cypher, and I know you've done some 5e stuff. If I remember correctly, Esper Genesis is 5e based.
Yes, highly compatible with that. And I'm a contributing writer just to put where proper claim is.
You have also...
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Rich Lescofair is the mastermind and genius behind the all of the world building and all the rules. I did like 2% of each for the core book.
That's still more than I know most people do. So, so we've talked about those. If I remember correctly, you've also done Tiny D6. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, okay. Tiny D6 is, I think, a genius of a little game that I wish I had thought of, to be honest. If I had thought of Tiny D6 on my own, I would probably be where Alan Barr is, the guy who invented Tiny D6. It's a great little robust system that's very easy and quick to teach. And I've gotten the point where, since I have several PDFs, I can do a one-shot over Zoom in half an hour. We're already in the gaming. Everybody's made their characters and we're done. And what it is how it works is real simple. You roll 2d6. Any 5s or 6s are a success. If you have an edge of some sort, it's advantage. You roll 3d6, and then any 5s or 6s count. If you are, behind the 8 ball, you roll 1d6. And that's it. That's really the system. Monsters are really easy, and they kind of base their difficulty and how many hit points they have. And it's such a simple system that the idea that you do more than 1 point of damage at all, or that armor is a factor at all, are considered optional advanced rules, which most people use. But yeah, I've taught you most of the system. And as a character, you pick a weapon you're good at. You pick 2 or 3 abilities off a list that you want to do. And most of them they give you advantage in a thing that you're doing. And you pick, I'm trying to think, some sort of concept for your character. And that's it. You go. So somebody looks over a list, they pick their things, and they move on. There's also races you can pick, and they do little advantages. But it's really quick. It's really fast to teach somebody and to play. In fact, if we could get it at the game store, I think Tiny Dungeons is out of print or going to a new print soon, so we can't get it. I would rather teach that at the game store for newbies versus 5e. No offense to 5e, but 5e, you really need to have pre-generated characters that have all their stuff written on them, so you're not looking at the books. You can focus on teaching them how to roll the dice and when to roll the dice versus looking at the book all the time.
Well, and that, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again on this program. There's never going to be a knock from 5e. I've played 5e for years. I played 3.5 for years. I played 3rd edition for years. I played 2nd edition for years. All right. I come from D&D. I will always have come from D&D, and that's part of who I am. It's part of what gaming has made me. But at the same time, there are things that particular game, there are itches that it scratches, but it's not the only itches I have. And as I've changed as a person and as a gamer and as a game master, those itches become very, very much not as strong as they used to be. And so I need other tools to get the ones that I have. And that's, other people can have other itches. And, if 5e scratches those, fantastic. That's great, Go play 5e, go have fun. Just play role-playing games, please. But we're gonna probably talk here on the show about games that scratch my itches because it's my show.
A perfect example is I at the game store I hang out at. There's a Shadowrun group. They have evolved from, all right, so we're the guys the corporations hire to backstab each other. That has evolved into they brag about how much they backstab each other. How many times was I killed when I wasn't paying attention? How many times did somebody else murder me? I'm like, and then there's a Pathfinder group I see now. They run Pathfinder like I used to play Champions in college, which is like there's a half hour of role play and setup, and then the rest of the session is just hours and hours of combat with everybody kind of doing their own thing. I mean, back in college, I'd be reading a literal comic book while I'm, doing my Champions game, but they're like, on their phone and playing 3 other games on their iPad until it's their turn to move their piece on the board, so to speak. And I'm not saying that for Pathfinder. I'm saying it just the way they're doing it. They're treating Pathfinder like a very little high-level tactical board game, practically.
Well,
they're
it's
cool
like,
with what they want to do. It's just
what,
niche.
What do they do now that like the poker players, right? The online poker players that'll have 15 tables up on, a command center style monitor, and you got 3 seconds to play your hand, and so you're just this one. Okay, now I'm on this one, and and you're back at the beginning.
I get a trivia bit for you, by the way. A lot of those like in-person poker players, the ones that are doing pretty well in the tournaments, were Magic players.
Very much so. A lot of them say that.
And that's because poker is such an easier game to play rule-wise than Magic is, so they can focus all their energy on learning how to play position and look for tells.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, that's. Go ahead.
I was about to say, and how I found that out is in my previous life, I was a copywriter, and one of my clients was a online multi-level marketing poker school. Yes. Amway for people, talking people into selling. I have a poker school. I can tell you how to play better. And when you get better, you can have your own poker school too.
Oh my
I am not making this up. A year later, I was in nursing school.
Yeah, I don't blame you. That's crazy. Well, yeah, that's kind of what we talked about doing for discussion tonight.
Poker game?
The,
What?
yeah, poker game. You know, I'm not gonna lie, that'd be kind of a fun thing. Is getting a whole bunch of us old guys together or whatever, and sit around and play poker, and see how much of the conversation gravitates towards tabletop role playing games. Just to see, you know.
I'm gonna raise you 2d6.
Oh golly! Well, Chris, it's been great having you on. I think we've had some good discussion about why you might choose a narrative style system over a more mechanical one. Not to say that one's better than the other, but because it's not, it's just different. But that's the reasons I think we have changed over the years, and why someone might consider doing that. We appreciate your time coming on. Do you have anything that you're working on that you want to shout out and let people know about before we stop?
Sure. Where do I begin? There's times I forget everything I'm doing or connected into. Ooh, so let's start with let's go work backwards for me. How about that? Right now, I am working on the adventures and some of the world building for a Kickstarter that just wrapped up for Esper Genesis called Expedition from the Mysterious Peaks. If this name does not ring a bell, I will explain it for you. There's an old D&D module called Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. Spoiler for a module that is older than, if you have kids, this one may be older than your kids. Or you may have kids that are just barely older than it. It's 30, 40 years old. You discover that your characters are in a buried starship. And then another little spin they did on it was when they did the art for different sci-fi things, they made the art specifically look weird. So as a player, you couldn't guess the function of the item. Like your pistol does not look like a pistol. Your blaster does not look like a blaster. It doesn't look like a gun. And this Kickstarter is homage to that. You can, yes, take your D&D 5e characters and have them go explore an underground starship, or you can use your Esper Genesis books, which are like 99.999% compatible with 5e, and answer the distress beacon. Or you can have a mixed group of sci-fi heroes and fantasy heroes figuring out what's going on. And the extra thing we had to add, so it would go from levels 1 to 20. I will probably be involved in doing some of the level 20 stuff because a lot of people don't want to do level 20 design. It's not easy.
No, it's not.
I'm trying to wrap up in the meantime the layout and design for a Cypher and fantasy Green Onan Fantasy Age adventure, basically the same adventure in two different systems for two different community content programs. It'll be sequel to my popular adventure, Changing Seasons, which was a little Cronenbergian fantasy trip. Very short, they're mini adventures. So it's definitely something you can put in as a sort of adventure in the mixture campaign. I'm still waiting to hear back on what level of progress has been made on the Cypher version of the Monty Cook D20 Diamond Throne conversion that's done by Here Be Dragons, an Italian publisher. From what I saw, I don't know if they're printing, but they're definitely doing layout design, and it looks gorgeous. I may be biased because some of my rule conversions are in there, but it looks gorgeous.
Awesome.
So that's, and if you're on the Cypher Unlimited Discord, I'm sure our three buddies would be like, yes, thank you for mentioning it. There is a channel there where I or Dean provide some of the updates that come from the Kickstarter in case you don't want to go to the Kickstarter, so you know there is progress being made. And I think the publisher has started becoming much more responsive because, for a while there isn't much really going on but writing, but now that they have stuff to show and art to show, they're much more communicative. Am I doing anything other than that's the stuff I'm kind of working on right now? And I too have my own little post-apocalyptic zombie thing I would like to get to. Problem is I keep seeing how I could do it in like 5 different systems, from Morkborg to Cypher to other stuff. And maybe one of these days I'll actually get my Spelljammer inspired setting out their solar sails. I was going to do it for 5e, but there's big hints that that 5e may kind of in its final years blow out by doing its own little version of Spelljammer. Or
I'd heard that. I just
well, the reason you is because Spelljammer is a great idea, but it is its implementation after the first 2 products. It was obvious.
horrible.
It's very obvious that while some things blossomed under no direction, like the known world becoming Mysteria in basic D&D, more often than not, that's lightning in a bottle. Other things just kind of go. But yeah, so the impression I get is that it'll become plain jammer instead, going on the astral sea versus from crystal to crystal. And my concept is more, it's just one huge fantasy. I wouldn't even say solar system because I don't even have the space. It's the void. That sort of thing. It braces much more being magic punk than any sort of science fantasy to it. But it is my regular Wednesday game, so my crew can tell you how many weird things I put in there already.
That's awesome. So you still have a bunch of regular games, or just one?
Oh yeah, every Wednesday I have a regular game. It's going on for 2 to 3 years. Most of my players had role played very little or not at all when they started with me. And I just now started game mastering because we went from like, we don't know what this is awesome, to let me teach you how to do this yourself. And so I can play, and they did that. So for like a year and a half, almost 2 years, I didn't even have to run a game. I just could play.
Nice.
But now they're like, we need to come back to the well. Come back, Chris. And I was like, oh yeah, that's why I was playing, because I actually could skip sessions. The game would go on without me if I didn't show up.
Yeah, so it's funny. In the chat there, Kelton's talking about leaving, and they've got to finish characters tomorrow. So Joanne's actually running she's starting a home game, and we're doing it's 5e. We're going to do Midgard, and so one of my cast members from Invisible Sun on Sundays, Kelton, and his wife and his cousin, I believe, nephew.
Something.
Nephew.
A relative.
Nephew sounds right. And myself are going to be playing in her game, and so it'll be the first home game that we've had, golly, in over a year now, I think.
Mm-hmm. When you say a home game, you mean people actually come through your door and sit at your table?
No, they actually live out west. But this will be a non-streamed private game where we can, it's the come in pajamas kind of game for Discord. So we'll be just hanging out in comfy clothes and not pretending that we're actually actors or know what the heck we're doing.
Oh, the first time I tried to stream, I just got who I had for my game and said we're streaming and let's all do it. And then I had one guy, he just could not stop himself. He would just find ways to like, you can't do that on camera. You can't say that on camera.
Watch me. I just did.
Exactly. Oh, I'm like, well, then it's not showing. Oh, Because if you want to do that by yourself, you do that by yourself. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Well, awesome. So, lots of stuff coming from you. We've got some projects, some of which we've actually backed as backers. Diamond Throne, in particular, I'm thinking. So,
Oh,
those we're looking forward to seeing that come out. And let's see here on next Sunday, we have our lounge once again, and we will have Invisible Sun because it's Invisible Sunday. And Friday night, we are playing video games. So Joanne and I are doing co-op games that we can play together because we enjoy doing that sort of thing together. And we're playing through Grim Dawn, which is a Diablo-like game, which is funny when you mentioned it. But it's a game you can play co-op on either local or online, and so we're doing a playthrough of that, and that's kind of fun. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at and what we're about. Those of you that wish to know what we're doing, feel free to subscribe to the channel here. Follow us on Twitch, subscribe YouTube. You can see the replays. You'll see in chat there is a link tree that you can find that has access to all of our contact information, Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. And, we've got our website as usual, angelcitadel.com, where we do regular reviews of new games that we pick up and new ones that we want to learn, as well as other products for games that we already have. Like I mentioned, Mortal Fantasy for Cypher System that Chris here wrote. So when Diamond Throne comes out, it'll get a review there too. So that's something we're looking forward to. But that's kind of where we're at for the lounge today. We're kind of winding down. The fire is getting low, and we're about to fall asleep because we're all old. So we'll say goodbye tonight until next week. And from our Citadel to yours, happy gaming.